Chapter 2, Goal. The purpose of this chapter is to say, if we were successful with Scrum in our personal life, our studies, our business, a large company, what would be the outcome? What's the goal? What is the goal of trying to do great agile business? Scrum is touted in business journals and in the business media as a framework to increase the speed of delivery. Case studies across global companies support that companies can increase speed of response time and delivery by replacing wait states with a rapid decision-making structure such as Scrum. In addition, the inspect and adapt cycle provides a regular cadence of continuous improvement to amplify this effect. But when is speed not desirable? It is important to apply a tool where it will generate the most value. Okay, so what we're going to do next is say, is there any case where it's not good to be faster? And I'll try to analyze that. Before that, I do want to say Elon Musk, when I was working at Tesla, many times said, pace of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run. And right now, as I'm recording this book, Tesla, for one of the 5 Musk companies, is as valuable, according to market cap, as all other automotive companies added together. That's how radically disruptive this is. And it's only speed. Speed of innovation is Musk's entire driver. So Musk isn't an agilist. He's not hiring people because they have Scrum credentials. Musk is looking for anyone and any method that increases the number of iterations and increases the amount of improvement in innovation per iteration. So agile methods are perfect for that. And I fit perfectly operating Agile at Tesla. So I'll say that's the goal, is increasing the pace of innovation. Now, let's say, where is speed not a good idea? Let's think of 2 scenarios, a convenience store in a high traffic area and a Japanese onsen or soaking tub in a landscaped private sanctuary. In the convenience store, speed of the overall experience is important to the customer and the business. As mentioned, this is a high traffic area, and the faster a customer moves through the store, the faster the next customer may move through the store. The faster the customer finds what they're hoping to find, is exposed to additional opportunities that may be valuable to them, and faster the purchase is completed, is a net positive for the customer and the business. Let's think about the soaking bath, the onsen. Losing track of time, turning inward into the private garden surroundings, feeling the ripples of the water from the slightest wiggle of your toes. These are some of the reasons that customers choose this experience. Here, prolonging a sense of time, a kairos, or expansive sense of time over a chronos or linear sense of time, is highly valuable. But what about cleaning the onsen after a spill? How long does the customer and the business want that to take? What about repairs or correction of a problem or disruption? What about response time to a rowdy, loud, or even dangerous customer? In these cases, speed is still the advantage to the customer and the business, but with the goal of speed to restore the almost timeless sense of tranquility. We will propose that speed is the positive asset for all companies to achieve what they wish, and is always an advantage, even if speed is used to more rapidly create slowness. In fact, if we look at companies in the same industry, we can compare the financial performance of companies that focus on speed of innovation versus companies that focus on continuous improvement. I should say focusing only on continuous improvement as opposed to speed of kaikaku or innovation, significant innovation, large innovation. Here is a stock price climb of a company that focuses on speed of innovation. Their CEO has publicly communicated pace of innovation is all that matters in the long run. This is Tesla, and that's Elon Musk. In the transcript excerpts from the investor earning call, you can see the management team does not use any internal financial modeling or financial metrics. They manage by measuring team performance and challenging the teams themselves to increase the efficiency and remove bottlenecks, which in turn allows the volume to increase. Their margin is entirely driven by automation. You can see the stock price shooting up. Now, when this picture was taken, the stock price surged again. So maybe I should update it. Now I have quotations here from investors saying, how do we model your future profit? What's your cost and profit per vehicle? And Musk says, we don't have targets. We simply measure the current state and measure that it's improving. And the investors got so frustrated because they couldn't make a predictive forward-looking 1 year, 3 year, 5 year waterfall plan. Musk doesn't have any waterfall planning. I didn't see any waterfall anywhere when I was working in any of the Musk companies. Yeah, and then here their CIO, also master of coin, it says, instead we measure at the team level. The teams see their own efficiency performance. How efficiently are they using money to improve the product? So if I'm in painting and I'm consuming money and I'm buying painting robots, paints, chemicals, throwaway goods, the rate at which I'm buying those things and innovating, consuming money and time to innovate, how does that translate into reduced defects in paint, higher perceived luster in paint, higher mirror, less orange peel, et cetera, et cetera. So teams see their own metrics. This is what allows them to be self-managing. And that's all automated, by the way. You see that in 5 seconds or less, usually much less, on big monitors in your smartphone. So you make your own financial trade-off decisions in team, and then the CIO and everyone looks across the entire company. That's how it's measured. So investors don't get Tesla. They're saying, well, what's your 5-year waterfall plan for increased profit? They're saying, we don't work that way. Instead, the teams see their own financial efficiency and improve it. And we can see all teams are trending improved. So the company's getting better. And it's already the most valuable car company in the world. And investors still just don't understand. That's growing by innovation, the most rapid market capitalization increase in history, in the history of publicly traded companies. We will now add a yellow line to compare this to a stock performance of a company focused only on continuous improvement, as opposed to Kaikaku, breakthrough innovation. In this case, it's Toyota Motor Company, and a quotation from Ford Motor Company leadership. You can see Toyota's dead flat in terms of stock price. Publicly traded markets reward innovation. I mean, they can penalize innovation too, but you're flat if you're not growing. And in the product owner class, I summarized this by a product owner mindset saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. Your job as a product owner is to prioritize radical innovation as fast as your team is excited to do it with quality. And that's what ramps up growth. You can see the stock price difference in companies with these two strategies. Ford has the same strategy as Toyota. They outsource innovation. Ford's woes have mounted overseas as well. It faces slumping demand in China, its second largest market. Chief Executive Jim Hackett at that time has said the number 2 US automaker at that time needs to move with greater speed. Continuous improvement, or traditional lean, increasing the throughput through a value add step, reducing a bottleneck, and not innovating radically the product itself, is not rewarded by the market on a publicly traded level. We see that when growth is the target, there is some industry evidence that speed is important. Speed of understanding what the customer wants, speed of executing that, speed of building quality in, speed of driving cost out, and speed of improving the customer perceived value. The Scrum framework matches this very well. Our part as Scrum Masters is to remove the impediments that increase the flow of customer visible value through the organization. The product owners are responsible for identifying the highest customer perceived value that the organization can build. And the developers are responsible for practicing engineering practices that let them increase quality while expanding the scope of what the team is capable of building quickly. As a Scrum Master, we also own the framework, the communication structure throughout the organization. Without this, decisions cannot be responsibly made within the teams, which increases pressure on management to make snap decisions with poor data, which decreases managerial effectiveness, which ultimately creates slow companies. What I'm trying to say here is the structure of Scrum, having a product owner to prioritize and be allowed to operate some budget, a Scrum Master to execute basically lean, continuous improvement in the Scrum team, and remove frustrations, remove impediments. And the developers empowered to choose how they work, choose their technical architecture, choose their tool set. This as a structure, as a framework, and then scaling a company by just repeating this structure in a flat matrix, allows data to be shared product owner to product owner to make decisions on priority very quickly. And I'll talk much more about that later in the section on Metascrum. And Scrum Masters to share impediments team to team, which we'll see more in the section on Scrum of Scrums or group impediment removal. This allows decisions to be made more responsibly and faster. It is the company communication, the framework of Scrum. So Scrum Masters were instantiating the framework of Scrum across as much of the company that's excited to try it. And we're increasing appetite. We're making it look fun so people want to try. And that creates the decision-making structure. And it actually creates the new funding structure too. And as we've just seen, slow may be a poor match if we want growth. Joe Justice has set up a certified Scrum Master class inside Tesla. And Ricardo Meriti has earned Scrum credentials inside Tesla. Tesla does not use the word Scrum often, only sometimes. However, the Tesla CEO Elon Musk is fond of saying Agile, and even now is finally implementing some of the sustainable pace practices of Scrum to reduce employee burnout. What about Toyota, which produces enormously successful products, but at a much slower pace? For Toyota, a fast-tracked project is 2.5 years long. A minor model change is a 2.5-year cycle typically. For Tesla, minor model changes happen about every 3 hours. Like that's how radically different this speed of execution is. And if you want to see that, you can take the Agile hardware developer class with me. We'll practice that. You'll see exactly how it happens. And some of that's later in this book in chapter 10, XM. So the pace is completely different of changes that the customer sees, like button placement or lack of button, noise deadening panels, different adhesives, a lighter substructure like different metal. These are changes that in Toyota would be 2.5 years when fast tracked, 5 to 7 years on a traditional model renewal cycle. In Tesla, there's about one of those every 3 hours. A fast-tracked project in Toyota would take 2 years, really 2.5, with minor model changes occurring every 2.5 to 3.5 years, versus Tesla making 27 changes to the Model S sedan alone in a single week. If Toyota is Toyota doomed in the long run by not having enough speed for the new world order? Joe has also worked with the management teams at Toyota North America in applying agility to develop the stamp and die operations of the 2019 Toyota Camry. The 2019 Camry is a first for Toyota with an all aluminum roof in one of their production vehicles, which required many inspect and adapt sprints to create and increase quality and reliability. Joe also worked with the Scrum team, all team members and their management support, earning certified Scrum Master credentials, creating the financial approval system for Toyota North America, which is used for all significant funding decisions in the entire company. Joe then was brought to Toyota headquarters in Japan, and then to train every employee of the Toyota autonomous driving team at TRIAD, which is now called Toyota Woven Planet, including the next CEO of Toyota, Daisuke Toyota, who is trained as a Scrum Master. The stated reasons for Toyota to train Scrum Masters is to improve happiness and quality of life at work, and to increase speed by establishing a rhythm of visible work. While Toyota is only now reorienting the company for high-speed delivery, as of this writing, products are still internally managed at Toyota City global headquarters as multi-year waterfall initiatives. Time will tell if Toyota pivots and increases speed of innovation fast enough to maintain their position as the largest company in the world by employer headcount. Definitely not by market capitalization anymore. A caveat, a warning, however. Both companies referenced above are enormously successful, Toyota and Tesla. Both have high customer satisfaction rates, and both are at or near the top now of product quality indexes. Saying speed is the only way to create and maintain an excellent, financially successful company is a stance that has counter evidence. However, if growth is the goal, we can make a much clearer case that speed is what drives growth. And if speed is important to drive growth, or for any other purpose, like rapid remediation of a problem, rapid solve for chip shortages, or any supply chain challenge, change, or problem, there is currently thousands of companies worth of evidence that Scrum is compatible with speed, if not the creator of speed. It is much more difficult to prove causality, that Scrum made a company double value. It's really hard to know that. Is Amazon so huge and so fast because they have small team sizes and push decision-making rights and process improvements into the teams? Or are they so huge and fast because they entered their market at the right time with genius executive vision? Likely some of both. And we can't prove the full stack teams owning most of their decisions and improvements is the majority reason that Amazon is so successful. We can't even prove that these full stack self-organizing teams are required for Amazon to be successful. We can observe that all 5 of the highest market capitalization companies on the planet have small team sizes as the primary working unit. These companies also stress and reinforce cross-functional or full stack skills, where in one team, you have the ability to design, produce, test, and solicit customer feedback directly in the same team. All these successful companies also have teams owning pieces with technical implementation and user-facing profit generation functions within the same team. As of this writing, those companies are Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. Tesla's coming up. There is a case that Saudi Aramco is more valuable than Apple without relying on small, cross-functional, mission-focused, customer-facing technical teams. And if this is true, then geography and politics can certainly create massive financial success as well. But while some of us cannot choose where resources are distributed in the world and what ownership and extraction rights are currently legal and which are not legal, we can choose our company structure. And with Scrum Masters, we have good evidence we can transform the entire business for speed. What about company size? Is speed less important for established older companies that employ hundreds or thousands of people globally? Robert Bosch GmbH is a global company employing more than 398,150 people as of their last reported headcount, which was 2019. It's 2021 now while I'm reading this, but that's the most recent data Bosch has reported. Here is a quotation from the chair of the board of Robert Bosch GmbH, Volkmar Denner, also performing as CEO of that company. Bosch. For Bosch, agility is crucial. It allows us to adjust to the increasing speed of change around us. Agility allows us to remain in a position as an innovation leader. Volkmar Denner, chair of the board and CEO, Robert Bosch GmbH. Joe Justice worked directly with Volkmar Denner at Bosch World Headquarters in Stuttgart. It started with Volkmar calling Joe Justice directly on his personal mobile phone. And I wrote, I was very surprised. Evidently, Volkmar's administration team had researched me and presented Volkmar with my mobile number and work history. Volkmar was very friendly and very familiar with my work and very clear. He said that an idea like Uber, an innovative, radical idea is how he pitched it, how he framed it, like Uber, would never survive in the current Bosch. He called it the Uber problem. He was saying Uber's good, as an innovation idea. The problem is radical innovation like that doesn't survive in the current Bosch. So he called that the Uber problem. Their project approval process was too laborious and risk averse. Volkswagen needed an agile company. So here's where I need editing help. See, I'm trying to avoid gender pronouns because it's not important that Volkswagen is a man. It's important that Volkswagen is the person in a budgeting and decision-making position for an extremely large global company. So what Volkswagen's decisions are affects work culture for hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and by a ripple effect, their families and even some of their families' friends. That's what's important. So editors, please help me remove where I miss gender pronouns. And if we say Volkswagen too many times, let's say the CEO or chair of the board, as opposed to chairman or even chairperson. Let's just say chair of the board. Okay. And that's part of what I mean by leading from an emerging future. Many people don't mind gender pronouns now, but imagine 40 years in the future. If it's a more gender equitable world where people are paid the same regardless of gender, like that's not a factor you can use to determine salary, which you can now. There's a gender pay gap worldwide. Some cultures are much larger than others. So if we imagine 40 years in the future, and let's say it's a good 40 years in the future, and there's no pay gap by gender anywhere in the world anymore, that would be awesome. Then it looks silly to read an old book where they say he, she, chairmen, and every once in a while chairwoman from 40 years ago. That looks silly. It'd be a weird book. So leading from the emerging future by Otto Scharmer is thinking as if you are in the future, like 40 years in the future. And then you make leading decisions now within your sphere of influence to bring you towards that more positive future. So I want this book, if I can, to make sense if that good future that I like comes true, where gender is just a non-issue when it comes to pay. So editing folks, if anyone tweets at Joe Justice and helps me edit, please help me catch all gendered pronouns, and let's write it so it's smooth and easy to read, even without bothering to say if someone's a man or a woman or gender agnostic or prefers not to identify or non-binary. Like, just skip that entirely and just say Volkswagen needed an agile company to create a faster pace of innovation. Oh, I did it again. The CEO said they were working with Tesla, and the parts of Bosch delivering to Tesla had seen agility and very fast hardware design, develop and test cycles. Their first interaction, as far as I'm aware, was making the steering rack for the Model S. And that's a Bosch part. And the Bosch teams were shocked. Tesla wanted an updated steering rack in volume delivery, in production, every week. The design cycle never ended and got locked, and they were shocked. How do we do this? And they did. In Bosch, they did, and they delivered updated steering racks for the Model S in volume production, in batch, every week. And more people in Bosch said, well, can more of us work this way? This is way more fun. It's way more effective. We have a radical pace of innovation compared to traditional waterfall project planning. So that started to get people talking. And I met the Scrum Master of the steering rack team. They're in Stuttgart. They were phenomenal. I have a picture of me with him, and either he or I or both of us are holding one of the Tesla Model S steering racks. Volkswagen said the rest of Bosch was not yet performing this way. The CEO's decision was to eliminate personal performance incentives for all of the 500 companies' top executives. Volkswagen is a strong leader. This would be replaced with a percent of total company profit that top executives would receive as a bonus, meaning top executives were no longer incentivized to grow and reduce risk in just their little piece, but were incentivized to find whatever grew all of Bosch the most quickly with an acceptable level of risk. Again. I need editing help. Please tweet at Joe Justice and help me. Volkswagen then asked me to present to these 500 top executives, including all the board of Bosch and the board above the board. Volkswagen wanted me to share about Wikispeed, my small but global car company. The CEO requested I surprise the leadership team in the presentation, those 500 people, that this agile way of working may very quickly produce a competitor from a sector they had not been tracking or not been even aware existed. That's what Volkmar asked me to do. The chair of the board also asked me to work in small groups with every single executive to explain in more detail how this agile way of working is managed. Following this, sections of Bosch, up to 4,000 employees at a time, switched to agile. Some sections of the company release newly designed and tested hardware and software every single week. I'll show some pictures of sprint reviews later in the book. Some of these groups of up to 4,000 people had no managers, only product owners to prioritize and scrum masters to remove impediments to speed of flow. This is what I mean by an agile company structure, or this is one example of an agile company structure. You also want open space and mob. For details of what happens inside a sprint at Bosch, see chapter 13, sprint. Finally, it is useful to see speed as is a top driver of virtually all the competitors and partners of these companies. Toyota. We must destroy the Toyota way. What I strongly felt was the difficulty of innovating when times are normal. We can identify things that will further accelerate to promote changes. When you look at a product, going to the actual sites, going to Gemba, that's the Japanese word for the place work is physically done, which is ideally where the work is also planned, but it's not where you just plan work. That wouldn't be called the Gemba. So a planning room is never Gemba. You could plan on the line, so you can plan at the Gemba, but Gemba means the work, the way where the place where the product is actually made. So for software development, the Gemba is actually your laptop or your desktop. What is important is to fuel the change point. Akio Toyoda, CEO of Toyota Motor Corporation. All of these quotes from the CEO of Toyota, Akio Toyoda is the current CEO, are saying the CEO's job is to make innovation come faster. That's a CEO level responsibility. In fact, I love the last quotation the most. He says it's to find where change is happening and accelerate it. I love that. So you're not like creating innovation or making all the innovation yourself. As a CEO, you're looking for where it is happening and you're fueling it. And I'll rephrase that for a Scrum Master and say a Scrum Master's job is to remove the frustrations to where you find innovation. And that increases the speed through the value stream map of innovation, which at the heart of it is really all a Scrum Master does after we instantiate the repeating structure of Scrum. Joe Justice was brought in to train all staff at Toyota Research Advanced Development, now called Toyota Woven Planet. And now called Toyota Woven Planet, which is the Agile Center for the new Toyota. It's a huge, beautiful building in downtown Tokyo. It's right by the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. It's absolutely gorgeous. Every single person at this site and in many of the suppliers, including Denso, were trained as a Scrum Master, and many were also trained as product owners by me. Akio Toyoda visited, the CEO visited to celebrate, and the ostensible next CEO, Daisuke Toyoda, was installed as an employee at TRID and trained by Joe Justice as a Scrum Master. A former Google employee was hired to operate as TRIAD's CEO. In this way, Toyota trains its next CEO in Agile working to be able to lead all of Toyota with agility when they take the reins in the company, probably in another 8 years, maybe 7. The homepage for TRIAD at the time of this writing reads Silicon Valley Agility, Japanese Master Craftsmanship. That really should be craftspersonship, but I didn't get to write their logo. They may have changed the logo now that they're Woven Planet. Volkswagen. The Volkswagen Group is becoming more transparent, more agile, more efficient, more innovative, and more profitable. That is what counts moving forward. Then, the big questions are we fast enough? If we continue at our current speed, it's going to be very tough. Volkswagen CEO, Herbert Diess. Now, if you're helping me edit, see how Microsoft Word in American English doesn't recognize Dice. Herbert Dice's last name, and many times it will autocorrect to DIES, dies, which would be very impolite to say to Herbert. That would mean we didn't want him to live. So when you import this document to help me edit, if you do, please check Herbert's name. Many times Word has autocorrected without even asking every instance of dice to dies. So after you import, please check and switch it back if you have to, so we can be respectful to Herbert. Paul Tacken spent years on assignment. Oh, also same of Daisuke Toyoda and Akio Toyoda. Their names are spelled T-Y-O-D-A. Yeah, Akio Toyoda. Their names are spelled with a D and the company spelled with a T. Microsoft Word, which is I'm using now in English, will autocorrect Toyoda to Toyota. So if you import these documents, please also check the Toyota names and see if it's referring to the company or Akio or Daisuke. Okay. Paul Tacken spent years on assignment at a global company in Wolfsburg, Germany, and has many anecdotes about traditional German and global manufacturing operations. Paul Tacken is my best friend. He leads with his heart in a business savvy way. I have never met anyone who comes across as so soulful, so heartful, so loving, wanting the company to be the most loving, conducive to excellent health and contributing to a better environment and better future, who's able to do that with business savvy and excellence, with just zero compromise between excellent business execution and loving the future direction the company is now going. Paul is so good at that. And in many ways, he's my emotional compass. When I'm confused about a product owner decision to make for a large group that'll affect many people's lives or big investments, I'll often talk to Paul because he meshes business success and leading to an emergent future perfectly. Paul talks about leadership hiring Scrum Masters into their companies. Scrum Masters establish a culture of fast action and self-decision making. This empowerment creates gentle and respectful pushback from even junior office workers when they're asked to wait or submit documents for approval from outside their team. Now, what I'm trying to say here is after Scrum Masters are installed, so in this case, leadership installed Scrum Masters. So it was a leadership decision. Let's get more agile. They hired Scrum Masters. The Scrum Masters coached everyone. If someone asks you to wait, give gentle pushback. Do I really need to wait? What can I do so I don't have to wait? Or if I'm asked to submit a document for approval and I don't get to make the approval myself, I should at least politely ask, may I approve this and not wait for approval or not submit a document for approval? This polite and constant pushback helps start to where responsible, increase decision-making rights and reduce wait states from the inside. So it's a top-down mandate in this case that Paul was teaching me about to instantiate Scrum Masters who coach the organization to make people not tolerate or be less tolerant of wait states and approvals. You know, why don't I get to approve it? I'm the one doing it. It's called decision-making rights, and Management 3.0 formalizes that very well. Well, now it's bottom up. These people coached by the Scrum Masters are told that it's acceptable and even expected in this company. And part of the reason that's so important in a company like Volkswagen is they had Dieselgate as a scandal. And many regulating bodies accused Volkswagen very rightly, and Volkswagen admitted guilt in this, saying, why do you have a culture where no one felt comfortable blowing the whistle? No one felt comfortable reporting the illegal behavior. And Volkswagen executives took that to heart. They thought about that and said, why do we have a culture where you're terrified to say no if your boss asks you to do something? And you're terrified to say, I think that's unethical. Why don't these people feel empowered? And they turned to agility to help increase decision-making rights where people felt empowered so they could avoid another Dieselgate. Someone, even a very junior level employee, would feel comfortable saying to their boss, no, that's illegal, which is a complete change in the yes, boss culture they had before. So that's why empowerment was so important in decision-making rights. Team members became more aware that their team produces an entire product or service without external approvals or wait states. Scrum Masters also coach executives on the most effective leadership methods when now funding thousands of Agile teams. Joe Justice was invited as the keynote speaker for the first Agile Automotive Conference, and there collaborated with passionate Agilists from Bros, the second largest automotive supplier in Europe, Ford Europe, Volkswagen Group, and their sub-companies such as Porsche and Bugatti, BMW and Daimler, Porsche and Bugatti, and separate large companies, BMW and Daimler. And also the large companies, because I don't want it to look like BMW and Daimler are sub-companies of Volkswagen. That'd be impolite to BMW and Daimler. Joe later was invited back to meet with the CEO of MAN Truck and Bus, a Volkswagen company, and have breakfast with regional executives from the BMW group, where they discussed their company-wide Agile transformation ambitions. The goals for all these Agile transformations were increased speed, increased innovation, rapid change, and risk reduction through quality and transparency, while they deployed speed at scale. All these companies hired Scrum Masters. The case I want to make here is the one goal is faster pace of innovation. And Scrum is super simple. There are only 11 rules, and Scrum Masters, by the time you're done with this book, you'll be super comfortable with those 11 rules in many different scenarios. So you can walk into a lot of different companies and help set up Scrum because it's simple. There's just 11 rules. And Scrum is really elegantly minimalist by itself. If you actually do the 11 things, it increases systemically, sprint after sprint, the pace of innovation and reduces the sprint length. It gives you faster pace of innovation, which is the one goal. Tesla. Pace of innovation is all that matters in the long run. Elon Musk, CEO, Tesla Inc., and CEO, Space Exploration Technologies Corp., better known as SpaceX, and CEO, Neuralink Corporation, and CEO, The Boring Company. As we mentioned previously, well, now's a good time to say this. So Elon does a trick to help compartmentalize these companies Elon's running to avoid context switching loss, and it's to group them by day or by half day. So Elon will have segments of time that are just Boring Company, and don't interrupt Elon with SpaceX information unless it's an emergency. Then the next box is Tesla, the next box is Neuralink, etc. The size of those time boxes is dynamically reallocated depending on where is the bottleneck. And the bottleneck to Elon's ultimate goal, which is a superior future where robots do physical work and people choose if they want to do physical work, and there's no disease, RNA vaccines are available, and we live out among the stars, et cetera, et cetera. Elon has these grand goals, which I'm a fan of. I actually think they're all, or almost all, amazing. So looking at the value stream map to that goal, like any product owner does, Elon then looks, where is the bottleneck? And that's where he spends the most time. In fact, that's where he sleeps. Elon doesn't own a house. Actually, I think he still owns one, but he uses it for company events. Elon sleeps in the factory, whichever factory is the bottleneck towards that grand vision. So right now, as I'm doing this audiobook, Elon's sleeping in Boca Chica, Texas at Starbase, which is a SpaceX facility, making the largest rocket ever made by humans. And the largest time box is allocated to SpaceX right now, and particularly the Starship rocket system. As we mentioned previously, Joe Justice set up a certified Scrum Master seminar inside Tesla. Joe later joined Tesla as a direct employee after this book manuscript was completed. So I'd already written this book. I actually intentionally rushed to finish before joining Tesla so I could then check my understanding in version 2 of the book, which is starting to happen now. After folks help me edit, please help me edit. Joe operated Agile at Tesla from the company global headquarters, we call it the mothership, in Fremont, California, USA. During publishing of this book, there was just enough time to add this excerpt because I republished from version 1.0 to 1.1, like while I was at Tesla, and 1.2 just after, something like that. Tesla inside, like SpaceX, is incredibly fast without much hierarchy. Anyone can talk directly to Elon Musk, the CEO. And if anyone tries to prevent talking to Elon, this is grounds for them to be fired immediately. That keeps the company very flat, very accessible, and very nimble. There is no chief role of anything in Tesla, as that would not be flat enough for the speed they achieve. There's no chief product owners in Tesla or chief scrum masters. That'd be too slow. There's a lot of agile scaling frameworks, and I view them as a very effective stepping stone. If we have a huge hierarchical, siloed by skills company, you could jump directly to full agile the way Tesla is. You could. But many companies choose another effective route. It takes longer, but it also works, where instead they'll first switch to something like scaled agile framework, which still has long planning and financial cycles and still has a lot of hierarchy, but it allows the teams to start doing extreme programming and some very important technical engineering practices and start to introduce better modular architecture. And then they'll step to something maybe like Scrum at Scale, which has our chief product owners, chief scrum masters, a product owner meeting. So it still has hierarchy. There's still slowdown in decision-making, but it allows us to do XP, XM, better modular architecture. It allows architecture decisions to emerge from the teams. It gets a lot closer to true agile. Then we might flow into something like less large scale Scrum, and you'd have groups of less per product probably. And the reason that's faster is because there's one product owner and there's not chief product owners. So you don't have a decision-making and approvals chain again, which is slower, especially when there's disruption or you want radical innovation. It also means the shared knowledge is shared in a more compact, less distributed group. So you have a faster pace of innovation. And that works really well if you already have modular architecture established. And then you probably move to what Tesla does, which is open space and mob. And yeah, so that's a natural progression of stepping stones. And you can jump directly to open space and mob. In fact, that's my specialty of organizational refactoring according to a rule, which we'll see later, called justice is law. But I'm a huge fan of all of these scaling frameworks. They have a place as stepping stones towards, and each increases speed of innovation. But you want to keep going to the right as fast as the company is excited, as fast as it's high morale to increase the agility. That keeps the company very flat, very nimble, right? There's no chief role of anything. Elon often sleeps in a sleeping bag in the paint building. So when I was first writing this book, Tesla was the bottleneck to the grand mission. And in fact, it was in paint. So I would start my days every morning in a building called North Paint, about 3 meters away from where Elon sleeps in a sleeping bag. And I was brought in, they said, this is our primary bottleneck for the company. And so I spent a lot of time there, but I actually worked in every area of Tesla and also visited SpaceX headquarters and SpaceX Boca Chica. Elon also frequently joined, Elon often sleeps in a sleeping bag in the North Paint building when the CEO was not sleeping in the new factories under construction. So Elon would fly, still does, to Giga Berlin, and he sleeps in Giga Berlin in a sleeping bag, or sleeps in Texas in a sleeping bag, or on the roof in a sleeping bag. He says it helps him get a feel for it. It helps Elon get a feel for the place. That's a trivialization. The amount of information learned so that Elon can help people reduce frustrations, reduce bottlenecks. That's why Elon's there. He's there to find Herbie in lean terms, in Eli Goldratt's the goal term. He's there to see where's the bottleneck in the construction, and sleeping there, being there for a full sunrise sunset cycle. And then the next one, you learn an enormous amount more than any report could give you. I never saw Elon consume a PowerPoint, and I never made a PowerPoint. I never saw any presentation in Tesla or SpaceX, not even one, except externally. Inside the company, you just talk. And since Elon slept there and he's worked those positions, he works the line, Elon works the line, you can say, I want to buy another robot. And Elon will say, that's a really good idea. I was working that line earlier and I saw it was queuing up. It was bottlenecking there at the definition of ready point. And that's what you get when the CEO is that engaged. You don't have to have reports and approvals. Elon also frequently joined the assembly line, wrenching and bolting, wearing production gloves, and helping configure robots. Elon claims 80% of the CEO's workday is spent on engineering. That includes wrenching things, drilling things. And Joe Justice believes this to be true. Speed is the reason for Scrum. That's the takeaway of this whole chapter. I've been trying to give evidence across different companies, but the takeaway is speed is the reason for Scrum. It is important to say a successful Scrum Master does not advocate rushing. I often get pushback from people who haven't done much Scrum yet, saying, but we don't want low quality. And they have a broken mind that says if we push speed, quality can only drop. Some people actually think it's impossible to increase speed without dropping quality. But there's an enormous amount of counter evidence that shows there are some ways to increase speed that can even increase quality. So I've got to explain that here because some people are stuck in that mental trap. So a Scrum Master does not advocate rushing. Degrading quality damages many types of businesses and the morale of workers who care about quality. A Scrum Master's job is to make it possible, even likely, for Scrum teams to increase speed while maintaining or increasing quality. But is that possible? Let's build something together to explore the idea. And the next chapter, Build, we do that. And we actually build in a way with a modular architecture and a scaling pattern that shows at least one way it's possible to dramatically ramp speed while increasing quality. And quality is measured by defects found in field and yield rate. But first, to summarize this chapter. In the next chapter. The goal of being a Scrum Master is to increase the speed of your work, and the speed of the team of people you need to work with to get your work all the way to done. Yeah, if you just increase the speed of planning, we just have a pileup of plans, right? So what we want to do is try to find a full stack work stream and increase the speed there. And if we don't have one, we'll try to create a full stack work stream, which is called a Scrum team. Scrum teams by definition are full stack unless there's a problem. And then you have a Scrum team that needs help. And by full stack, I mean they can design, analyze, build, test, deploy, and get market feedback on their own product. And Amazon, for example, is full of teams like that. We do this by removing impediments to the flow of work towards done. The flow referred to here is all the steps from concept and launch through design and build to done of high quality tested work with customer feedback or user feedback or whatever consumes your product. Maybe it's another digital thing or a robot, but you get feedback. The interface. That means we will need to be an expert in business flow, team psychology, organizational change for continuous improvement itself. Actually, should clarify that. And we'll see this will require a good grasp of complex adaptive systems, organizational structures, liberating structures, theory of constraints, human communication, motivation, and even traditional management. Welcome to Scrum Master class. We're going to cover a lot and it's going to be awesome. And I've got a quotation here from the CEOs that we saw earlier. Thanks for participating in chapter 2 goal.